Step into a dark and dangerous world of Doskvol with our Blades in the Dark tabletop role-playing game and podcast miniseries. Join us as we guide you through the seedy underbelly of this gritty city and experience thrilling heists, dangerous encounters, and nail-biting action. Whether you're a seasoned gamer or a newcomer to the world of RPGs, our podcast will keep you on the edge of your seat and leave you craving more. Are you ready to roll the dice and take on the shadows? Hello and welcome, heroes, to the Crit Academy Dice and Dialogue. I am your host, Justin.
I'm your co-host, Ian.
I'm your co-host, Alex.
And I'm your co-host, Brandon.
I am super excited to discuss Blades in the Dark, you guys. We recently just had a wonderful experience, first-time experience, so we got really excited to talk about our first impressions of Blades in the Dark. Before we get into like the mechanics and the game setting and everything, do we want to talk about our experience? Or do we want to discuss kind of what...
Let's I'd say break more
Set
into
up.
like the game setting than like the how the
Yeah.
All right.
rules are,
I was
then
gonna
and
say,
then
do
go.
you want me to like?
They're back.
Do you want me to like introduce the game setting and
Yes.
introduce like? So the game Blades in the Dark is a heist game, or more like a criminal game, where you play criminals in a city called Doskvol, which is one of several cities that are still surviving after some sort of annihilation, where the outside world is entirely too dangerous to live in, so you must live inside the city walls. And the city is powered by Leviathan blood. There are Leviathans, giant beasts and monster creatures in the sea that these seamen go out and hunt and drain of their blood so that we may have power and we may have energy. It is very much noir, dystopian kind of a thing where the rich are rich and you are struggling to get by. There's kind of two sections to the game. There is what I call the micro game, which is where the players are actually like playing the game and getting to interact with other people and getting to steal things or, you know, make trades or make deals and stuff like that. And then there's the macro game, which is going on with your crew at the simultaneously. And the things that you do in real life, in real time, affect what happens to your crew, which is kind of like, you could say like your gang or like your reputation, things like that. And that's kind of a very brief rundown of the kind of setting and feelings of this game. Oh, it's also set in like the 1900s, so like
Ish,
before
yeah.
the Roaring 20s, like the Depression, like that kind of a section of life. So yeah, that's kind of the setting, the mood, the vibe.
I mean, just get into like the right mindset for the game to get a few ideas off of. It even recommends this in the book as like one example of this style of setting. But I actually watched a couple episodes of Peaky Blinders on Netflix. So
I heard that.
Yes,
that's an
very Peaky Blinders.
absolutely agree with that.
Yep.
Now, we had the privilege of doing a first impressions. We all played with Alex running the game recently for us. So I'm excited to kind of talk about our experience.
and you're excited to be a player for once.
Well, actually, as of lately, I've been getting to be a player, and I enjoy that. I know I'm a player in Alex's games a little more often now too. So right out the gate, I want to talk about the crazy. In the next episode, we're going to talk very detailed about the character creation, but there's something really notable that I loved about this game.
Yep.
And so a lot of the game takes place in like a recall or a flashback.
Yes.
So instead of trying to plan out every single little detail, you get to flash back and say how this action unfolded.
Yep.
And how you prepped for it. And that was something I hadn't seen since I played Feng Shui, I think. Was it Feng Shui that did that? It
No.
was one of the action ones, action game RPGs.
And I kind of like that aspect just because I play like for example Shadowrun, where players will spend hours planning a single heist that will only take about 15 and a half hour.
Yeah, 15 hours.
15 minutes to a half hour.
Yeah. So for me, that was unique because
Whereas like here, you can just jump into the heist and just keep inserting what you did to plan as you go along.
And it captures that like Ocean's 11 feel very well, because you see that when something goes right for the crew, you see how it unfolds in a flashback.
Yeah.
And I think they captured that vibe really, really well.
It was such a unique setting.
It is.
Well, yeah, the setting itself is really
mechanic.
cool, with like specters and spirits and all kinds of stuff just kind of roaming the monsters, roaming the land, but
Outside the city, yeah.
you gotta stay inside the city. So our experience, that was the one thing that jumped out in my first experience. I'd like to know what Brandon, what did you think?
You know what that reminds me of? The ghost outside of the city and such. Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within.
Yeah.
Man, I don't remember that movie at all, because I
And
remember falling
that's
asleep
the
because
main
it was
thing.
boring.
And here I
Yeah,
thought you were
it
going to
was
say
a boring
Mistborn.
Mistborn's the same way too, right?
Yeah.
Everyone stays within the city to avoid all the mist wraiths and stuff. But anyways,
You know, they're mostly harmless usually, but hey.
yeah, well, they don't know that though. That's the problem. They're
Yeah.
like, well, they stay over there, they move slow, just don't get near them. So that was kind of so that's kind of something that jumped out at Brandon. Ian?
I definitely think it's a very grim city, very downtrodden. And therefore you can say that you're approaching something that overall has a low morale.
Mm-hmm.
And that's definitely baked into not just the setting itself, but the gameplay as well, too. It kind of reflects that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like how you kind of start at the bottom in the muck, and you kind of claw your way up.
Yeah, you got to hit that score to be successful and grow, right?
And I also kind of feel like, though, that no matter how high you climb, you never quite get out of that muck either.
Alex?
The thing that really stands out to me is how player like that. So something that I should explain about the game is that this stuff goes beyond being player like initiative. It's actually like the players are the ones who make all of the decisions, who drive it. I just simply am a reactive DM. It's a very, very reactive GMing. I simply gave them the task, I gave them the thing that they were going to do, and then they were the ones who set out to be like, okay, well, does this exist? Does this exist? And it's really, really fun to just sit back and watch your players become really, really engaged. And it's just incredibly player driven, which is why the flashback works so well, is because if the player did forget something, no, they didn't. Like, it's not, the DM's not gonna, you don't have to give them gentle pushes. So this isn't necessarily a game that I would play with something that I call audience members, which are people who like to sit at the table and laugh at the jokes and have a lot of fun just sitting there and existing at the table, but don't really like interact or do like any kind of interaction at all. I don't necessarily think that this would be a very good, and that's my one critique of this whole thing. But besides that, I just really want to tell you how player driven it is. So if you have people who really want to be part of the story, be in it, be in the thick of it, this is the game for them.
Absolutely.
You know what this game makes me think of is when we were children and we would use our imaginations to play games and such. That's what it makes me think of, because we, like she was saying, we'd have instances where we'd be like, oh, my character, I'm going to go and do this, but I can do this because back a day ago I had this. And it reminds me of like Edwin and Robin playing. It's like, okay, so pretend that this happened and that this happened. And it's, when you're used to D&D or a game like that, you as the player are not used to taking control of the storytelling.
Yes.
But in this, that is what it is. So it was uncomfortable at first, but then it became this really, really solid flow between all three of us. It was great.
I agree.
And-
I was uncomfortable at first too.
And I'll admit, for me, it was kind of difficult throughout. But I will also freely admit that role-playing is not necessarily my strongest suit either. How was my role-playing?
You say
It's
that,
sick.
but I thought
It
you
was
did great.
Good. Your role playing was good. I don't know what you're complaining about.
I mean, it wasn't up to the level of this great.
He dressed in a
awesomeness.
vest and a skelly cap, like the one of my
Oh
cards.
yeah.
And he had that whole thug thing. It was
Yeah,
awesome.
You nailed it. I really did. When I saw you,
I found that exhausting, though.
when
And he was
yeah,
drinking on
right.
camera. It was
when I
great.
saw you,
Yep.
I immediately thought Mistborn Thug.
Yep.
And I feel like that's the vibe you were going for. And it
Yep.
was St. Patrick's Day. So.
Yep. And I was kind of going for like, the Peaky Blinders look, too,
Yep.
somewhat. So,
So now that we've kind of set what really stood out to the game, I want to give some examples of some of this stuff. So the way the game unfolds, we were supposed to go into an auction and steal a jewel and be done with it. But some stuff happened, and my boy over here, Ian, his character got shot.
Yep.
And he was about to die. But because my character's a mastermind, he had already planned for this stuff. So I flash back where I secretly had Kevlar woven into his suit as well as mine. And so when he took that shot, it was like, oh, thank God. But
I think my character
He blamed it on the whiskey. He said that the whiskey gave him superpowers.
I'm wearing an impermeable.
Okay. Drink alcohol, become bulletproof. Got it.
Interesting correlation.
Okay. Of course, I did mention too that I actually had body armor already. So.
Yeah, right. But that's an example of I saw that he was in a situation that was not good. I didn't know all that he was capable of because I barely knew what my character was capable of.
Right.
But I knew that was a feature that I had. And so that's an example of way one of the flashbacks worked. Brandon did it in a different way.
Before we go off of that, I kind of actually somewhat wish you let me get shot and actually take the damage. And
I'll remember that next time.
here's why. Just because of the way it handles the damage and the stats effects is very different.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of see how would that have impacted us. Because the idea is us to get an impression and learn the RPG as we go along. Not complaining about what you did, but I'm just saying, this was nice.
That's what it sounds like. You saved my character. You should have let me get hit so I can feel it. I can get a full impact. Yeah, the impact of a bullet's probably pretty painful.
My point, though, was, okay, don't get me wrong. I like the experience we got from that, but I'm kind of curious what experience we would have gotten to hit fork the other direction.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to say.
I understand. I'm just haranguing you. The interesting part of it was, so it's broken down into several kind of steps, the prep, the plan, and then the action. And the prep and planning was 100% us driving what do we want to do to gather the information we need, because we didn't come up with a plan of what we needed. We're just like, okay, well, we're stealing something, so Brandon's sneaky, so why don't you get us a floor plan, right? So his goal was to sneak into the place ahead of time and sketch it all out, while we needed to know whether we can manipulate anybody into helping us get through security and what are the patrols like. And so Ian took care of that information.
Well, I tried to, at the very least. Because remember, I tried to hang outside the security firm, try to size up those coming in and out, and maybe even potentially, I didn't share this, but I thought about, what if I try to join these guys and get in on the inside?
Oh, like that.
But then when the exec walked by and started being really snooty.
Which is a great way to segue into something that is very interesting about this game that I think a lot of the viewers and a lot of the listeners might not be incredibly big about or have knowledge of. This is a D6 setup, but it's not a D6 setup like Shadowrun is. It's a D6 setup as in there's a couple of conditions that you are under, that you will be put under every single time that you want to do something, that decides if you get like 1 to about 5 D6s, and then you roll all of those D6s. And my favorite thing about this is that there's that 1 through 3, or 1 through 3 is a failure, like it doesn't happen, right? Just totally normal. 6 is a success. More than 1 6 is a critical success, but if you roll a 4 or a 5 as your highest roll, you actually get a partial success. So, for example, there was a partial success where Brandon was trying to shoot a balloon, but to make it sound like gunfire went off, so that the gangs that were there would start shooting. And so he actually didn't shoot the balloon. But what he did do was break the glass in the ceiling, and that made everyone scared. And then because Ian had given someone a rage potion previously, that was just the click that needed to happen in order for him to punch the other dude in the face, and then it just all went to crap.
Yeah.
It's like, hockey games, whenever one of them starts fighting and then the people on the other side of the rink are like, oh, guess we're fighting now. That's what happened. Like that kind of a thing. But there are partial successes, and your how many dice you get are dependent on how many pips you put into that skill, And then there is a position that the GM gives. So you can do controlled, which is you have a good chance, so you get a die. You do risky, which means that like you have a head-on-head chance 50-50. Or you're desperate, which means serious trouble. And then so it's your pips, and then it's the position, and then it's the effect level. And then you can do bonus die through getting a devil's bargain, which Justin can talk about, or through incurring stress, which is kind of your hit points in a way. It's kind of hit pointy. But yeah, that's kind of how all roles are situated. But Justin, do you want to talk about the devil's bargain?
Right after Ian.
It actually occurred to me as you were walking through that like in the Cypher systems, like the DM doesn't set DCs or roll dice.
Right. And I like that.
Nope.
Anything that's less work for me, I'm a fan.
And I mean, you do set the DCs to a degree and determine how difficult the situation is, but
There's like three levels. That's it.
yeah,
And those are pretty easy to distinguish. Not, like other games, D20 systems where the range can be anywhere from, 5 to 30. So you mentioned Devil's Bargain. So a Devil's Bargain grants you that extra die, or does it grant you a success? It's a guaranteed success.
no, it's a bonus die.
So it is just a bonus
Yeah,
die.
bonus die.
But it builds
pay
up
for it.
no stress. So one of the things I think she mentioned is that you can apply effort to add an extra die, but it causes stress, which is this kind of bad stuff, right? And if it builds up, it becomes a problem. Now,
I do want to be very clear with the Devil's Bargain that you're correct. Bad stuff happens, but it may not necessarily be a penalty or extra stress. It can be a long list of other things too. That you
yes,
could choose.
and so the GM also has kind of a bit of control over what the severity of that consequence is, and usually the consequence is outside of the scope of what's going on right now. I think that you ended up, when I did the Devil's Bargain, you ended up making it a result of our crew building new enemies between some of the other factions based on my actions.
That was cool.
Yeah, basically my devil's bargain was that he incurs 2 points of stress, and the factions now know that your crew is the one who set all of this shit up, so they hate you.
because you got
You get 2 enemies.
because you pulled other facts into it compared to the 3 that were already involved, not counting our group.
I'd like to point out that Sly was
Granted.
right on point with making sure that
Granted, we dragged
it
in
was
the.
a success.
There were 5 factions altogether then, because there was us.
Oh, there was 3.
There was a security firm.
Oh, yep.
The
Okay.
security.
Then there,
That's fine.
and then we heard there's 2 other gangs in the area. So we decided to basically play those 2 gangs against each other at the location to distract the
The
guards.
distraction. Yep. So yeah, you're right.
And then he brought in another mercenary
Yeah.
from
Okay.
another faction, and then you brought in yet another mercenary into the mix. That was his rival.
So
from another
okay.
faction.
So I think you're making me excited here. So throughout all of this, right? Let's kind of set the scene of what our characters were. My character was Sly. He was a mastermind. He was the
he's the planner basically.
yeah, but his term is spider because he has
Spider.
webs everywhere, right? I
Yeah.
love the
Mhm.
terminology, by the way. So he's a spider. He's got webs over everywhere, and he can control and manipulate people. That's his thing.
And Patrick Kelly, that was running. He was a cutter, and basically think you're average thug on the street, basically like your muscle.
Yep.
And my character was Khajiit. As in Khajiit, yes, that's right. And he was a hound. Hounds are responsible for being able to
Like snipers
sniff
and
out stuff that you're looking for, or being able to find contacts and info.
Although another thing about Patrick's true name was Crunch.
Yes.
Crunch.
I swear to God, I feel like your character goal would have been to become a captain. I'm
No!
not even kidding. I know, but that's after your whole sriracha thing.
That was years ago.
Whatever.
And then me.
Anyways, so, as we're gathering this information, they end up stumbling and meeting an NPC, and they're having a really, really good scene. So I'm scribbling down all the stuff that's happening. So when my turn, because my character, so you get vices for your characters, right? And a vice helps you reduce stress because it's limited to how much stress you reduce overnight.
And you can also gain XP from your vice too. And let's be real here. I probably would have ticked all 2 boxes from my character's vice.
Definitely.
So while my character was at the
Alcohol.
theater spending all the crew's money because
Asshole.
That's his vice. Why he manipulates everyone to go do jobs, and then he spends all the money on ridiculous fancy beverages and theater experiences. And they were doing this scene where they were gathering information. They met Samuel, one of the security down on his luck, basically manipulated by middle management and all this other stuff. And so I'm taking notes, and then I tried to tie, when it came back to my turn, I tried to tie how Sly made all of that happen without everyone being aware.
Yep.
And it felt so rewarding to be a part of that and be like, you guys are out there doing the work, but he's actually the puppet master. And it flowed really well. The story came through. Alex, you did a wonderful job making kind of adding the detail and fleshing out the scenarios, even with the rivals, because when you build your characters, you do rivals and allies.
Well, I think the small details end up being fun, because when we end up staking out the bar where the security guys were hanging out, Crunch walked in, and the bartender was like, clearly you're not the kind of people that walk in here.
What are you doing here?
And
spotted it.
And not even like, or like a type of liquor is like, can you even afford it? And after taking one sip, I suddenly like broke down the entire analysis of the taste, the flavor profile of what year it was made.
That's the reason Sly hired you.
Yep. And like the dumbfounded look on the bartender's face, going, "What? How do you know this?" Because I'm a drunk.
And I do want to say, for people who are thinking of game mastering this, you're like, oh man, I don't have to roll any dice. How easy is it to game master? It's so easy that what gets the players XP is outlined on their character sheets, as well as like progress clocks are on the character sheet, as well as places for them to fill in people from their background. So there was a bounty hunter who was hunting Khajiit, and that ended up being used. And actually, at the very, very beginning of the game, they were like, I was telling them about this heist that they were going to do, and they're like, who did I get this information from? And Justin had a girl on a character sheet that, on his character sheet that actually was like his informant. It was his informant. And so I was like, it was her. And so it ties in really well. The character sheet is really set up not just for the player to have a good time with the character sheet and be able to be reading it, but also for the game master to be able to read it and actually be able. And then also the crew sheet is a little bit more complicated, I will say, but it's pretty intuitive whenever you actually look at it. So like you'll have your layer, and as you gain new pips and new things, you'll be able to expand into different places in the grid. It's almost like
you're reaching the town
grid. You'll be able to expand into different places in the grid, and it actually like really buffs you or debuffs you.
Reminds me of like a talent tree.
Yeah,
fun.
You can spread as a team to go to
and
specialize your characters.
And for that matter, the crew sheet basically indicates how many members we have in our crew too that aren't just us. That we can also send out and do other jobs too.
Yep, which I think is really cool.
Yeah,
coming back to kind of the retainer concept.
Yeah, and you can upgrade your crew what resources you have access to, how many crew members you have, and so on and so forth, and how skilled your crew is for that matter.
Right.
So
there's a few things that I want to touch on as we kind of given this overview of our experience. I think talking about some of the way we use some of our abilities is probably a really good one. So I think some really fun stuff. So we had planned out our strategy. We got some fancy clothes to get us into this shindig, I guess, this auction. And the way it all tied together was done really naturally. It flowed really, really well.
I remember describing my character as, imagine stuffing a massive potato that's redheaded inside of the suit.
Yep. Mr. Potato Head. And he's Crunch.
Yep.
Because they crunch when you bite them.
Yep.
Anyways, so the one thing that I really enjoyed was I was reading through my abilities, trying to figure out when was the best opportunity to use them. Because some of them, like mine, I could only use twice per score.
Yep.
Not per day, per score, which means no matter how much time we spend in prep, planning, and execution, I can only use that ability twice. And I thought that was an interesting approach because it's not based on a day. So it basically removes the I'm going to take a long rest to get all my powers back.
Yep.
Which I thought was a really great mechanic.
Okay. The mechanic I had added more stress to me when I used it, but basically it said you can do superhuman feats.
Yep.
Or near superhuman feats is what it said. And one example is you fight 6 guys by yourself.
That's awesome.
Right.
That's some Jet Li stuff right there.
But I ended up using it in a way where, like, okay, this guy just shot me. Let me
Shrug it off.
let me demonstrate how I know how to punch in the fighting pits. And clocked him and took him out in one hit.
And so that's a really cool thing because that's not something that either of our characters could do.
Nope.
Brandon,
I had Scout, and I never actually ended up using it. So
what did it do?
Scout had 2 features to it, and it was I could get an extra die when it came to a check trying to find a specific person, I think it was. And the other one was I get an additional die when I'm trying to stealth in order to not be caught by somebody, as long as I have like
Didn't
camouflage
you use
or
that
something.
when you were walking through the thing to get blueprints to create a map?
No, because I wasn't looking for a person.
Oh, I thought you said when you were trying to avoid being detected too. Well, that's a shame. Yet somehow,
I think the one that you're thinking of is sharpshooter because I remember you originally said that you had sharpshooter, and then I looked at your character sheet. So what we're talking about is on the character sheet, there's several different, you can almost think of them as like feats from D&D. There's just like special little things that you get to do because you're a special little person. And so one of the things that you get to do is like have this crazy strength like Ian had. Well, there's a couple on each sheet that are unique to each sheet. Well, he originally thought that he had the sharpshooter one, which was that he has like whenever he's in cover, he basically gets an extra die for shooting things or something like for shooting at people or something like that because he had the rifle. But it turned out that he had actually taken Scout instead. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
Brandon?
I do.
I'm surprised since how much you drank. I didn't expect you to remember anything.
I was the one drinking whiskey during the
Yeah.
game.
I'm pretty sure Scout said that I get 1 extra die when I'm trying to look for somebody specifically, and the other was if I'm using camouflage or I'm hiding in a pre-prepared area, I get an extra die in order to hide.
Didn't you use your cloak to hide from us?
Yes, I was preparing to use Scout, but I never had
Okay.
the opportunity of a guard to find me.
So, okay, well, why don't you tell us about the power you did use? The thing that caused the whole twist.
The whole twist. You talking about the flashback?
Yeah. So, because that was a specific ability, right? Or mechanic or action?
That was a specific mechanic that any one of us could do.
Yeah. So, your characters all get actions, right? You all basically have kind of the same list of actions that you can pull from. And he went ahead and used the one that called the flashback.
Yes.
And so,
the
set the
flashback
scene
one.
for everybody. What is
Okay,
going on?
So the
And
initial,
what did you use it for?
The initial thought was we're all at this gala, and there's this big ass diamond on display. In this case, with 3 other items, and we didn't know what the items were going to be.
Right.
We knew there was going to be a diamond there, but we didn't know what the other 3 were. And you got security there, you got a bunch of people there. There's 2 rival gangs there, and everyone's having a good time doing their thing. And the whole idea was for Khajiit to pop a balloon, which is going to send everyone in a panic because there's like, oh no,
Which Samuel was carrying a bunch of them.
yeah,
that was his
Sam was
thing.
carrying a bunch of them. That was his talent, was balloon animals.
That was an awesome talent. I don't know how that came up, but it was great.
I'm so happy for the fact that actually both the guards were bullying him. And most people, and probably most onlookers didn't realize that he was a security guard member who was looked down on.
Right.
So,
The whole idea was to cause a distraction, cause mass panic, break the diamond open, replace it with a fake one, or give it to Justin's character's rival, and he was going to fall
Revan.
out of his pocket, and then he was going to get in trouble, so he wouldn't owe him money
Because he
anymore.
was in huge debt with Revan,
Yes.
which
It's-
Alex did a great job role playing him trying to collect and threaten me.
Instead, the idea to betray everyone did not come up until Alex described the tentacles and what they did.
See,
I was like, that is a perfect opportunity to start doing flashbacks. Because I expected everyone else to do a flashback along with mine, because it caused a chain reaction. She had stated that these tentacles from these leviathans, when you consume them, are treated like a drug. And they're like a depressant drug where they just kind of like, everything slows
Zomb
down.
you.
Yeah, zombifies you.
a relaxant.
Relaxing, yes. And when all the panic's going on, Sly and Revan are talking, and I finally picked up. I was like, okay, that's where it's gonna happen. You all hear the sound of a cane tinking on glass, and you turn to see a man in a plague doctor's mask, who was one of my good guys. As a character, you choose someone you know that likes you, and someone you know that does not like you. Like mine was a bounty hunter and a spy. The spy was my friend.
I broke
And
his spy's face.
and he said, Khajiit sends his regards and smashes the glass in and said, right there, I'm going to do a flashback. And that was that my spy friend had found out what the other 3 items were. So Khajiit bought a special type of ammo that would vaporize whatever it touches, therefore making a cloud of this Leviathan blood in the air to drug everybody. And my spy friend would take the gem or the diamond for himself and then leave. And I got a what was it called? A partial success with that one?
Yeah. So, yeah, I think either you got a partial success or whenever I rolled for later on, yes, you got a partial success. And then later on, I rolled for the spy and he also got a partial success.
And in the end,
At this point, we're just like, what are you doing?
yeah, and they're like, what are you
Yes.
doing? And I was hoping that they would catch on because in every heist movie, that's how it happens. There's always a betrayal, and then there's another flashback that goes with that one saying, oh, I knew you were going to betray me, which did end up happening because you ended up doing a flashback too.
I did the devil's bargain, but yeah.
Yeah, he ended up looking at my character sheet and saying, hey, this bounty hunter that doesn't like Kaji has found him. And I'm like, uh-oh.
Because Sly fully understands everything because he's got webs everywhere. He's a spider. He learned ahead of time that Khajiit was planning to betray him, but since he still needed his skill set, he couldn't just get rid of him. So instead, he planted Samuel by manipulation in their path, who was the source of the distraction, who happened to be was he a spy?
Who, Samuel?
Samuel was my contact to hire
Samuel
the
is
bounty.
also a bounty hunter.
Yeah, Samuel also. I don't remember. I think I had Samuel hire the bounty hunter for me to take out Khajiit. Was that what it was? I don't
Yeah.
remember the exact details.
I was going to give a whole list, and I ended up like zoning out, but I was half asleep.
But the goal was that Sly learned this because he knows everything, and he had already hired through Samuel the bounty hunter who is after Khajiit to take him out so he wouldn't steal the diamond.
Yep.
So,
And in
But
the end, who got the diamond? I can't remember.
I did.
he
It
did.
was you. And then you dropped the fake diamond in front of Samuel and was like, oh, thanks. And then
Yeah, it was a huge cluster, but it was so much fun.
yeah, it was.
And remember, you were both surprised that I did not try to steal the diamond for myself.
Yeah, I was very impressed. But Sly knew the truth. He had enough. He knew everything about you, even which hand you hold your pecker in when you're going pee.
Shit.
What the fuck?
I mean,
Her look on her face is like,
Yeah,
what?
what?
Well, he needs to know everything.
Okay.
That's,
the way I always kind of pictured Crunch was like, yeah, he's a thug. Yeah, he's a drunk. Yeah, he'll break your face, and he's very rough around the edges. But in the moment when the chips are down, he stays on target.
Yep. So now there's a few things I want to touch on that I don't think we really got to experience that I think would be interesting.
Yes.
And I don't know if Alex, you've delved too much into these, is the trauma and the progress clocks. So
Yeah.
I want to talk about the
So-
progress
oh.
clock first.
Go ahead.
Because when I read about this, it's exactly like what I do with escalation dice. So the progress clock is basically a kind of event alarm, and it breaks into 4, 6, or 8, depending on the complexity. So, for example, if we decided to have, when Khajiit was sneaking around the hotel to get the prints and plans, maybe there was a certain number of checks before somebody was notified, right? So you could put, okay, every time he makes a check to start drawing, or to what is it, plant some evidence or whatever, you'd get a point on the progress clock, and the progress clock means an event is going to occur. And I think that is a really great way to build tension. Now, because it's our first game and we were still learning some of the stuff, we kind of just rolled with it so we make sure we got through. But this is a really powerful tool, no matter which RPG you're playing, to build up the tension, especially if you warn the characters what's going to happen. So, okay, the security guards, the security are watching the area, so every time you take an important action, you're going to get a progress clock. So you have X amount of time to gain the information you need before they try to catch you. And I think that tool is super, super powerful. I don't know if you guys read into that at all. But I really loved it, and I would like to see it used more across other RPGs because it builds tension in the player.
Unfortunately, I didn't really cover like I was hoping to because it got busy, but I still read a decent chunk in here. And there's definitely a lot of fun stuff in there, and that's one of them.
I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Alex or Brandon.
The big thought that I have, because I have had just to be fully candid, I have played 3 sessions of Blades in the Dark before this as a player myself, so I'll be able to tell you about my player character during the player character segment.
Nice.
The progress clocks were so nice whenever it came to, because the game was streamed, and so the progress clocks were nice because we really had like a hard in, hard out, and it allows it is so devilish whenever the DM just goes, oh, okay, so you're gonna go ahead and do that too, you're gonna go ahead and go to that bar. All right, I'm just gonna
Fill it in.
All right, go ahead and go to the bar. It's so, it's kind of the same feeling as whenever the DM says, oh, you want to do that? You want to go ahead and do that? Because you can do that, and picks up a die. It's that and that tenseness, that tension, like you said, is so important to every game. But if you have hard in, hard outs, what my conclusion was going to be, but I'll say it now because it's going to be in another episode. This is a great pickup game.
Yeah.
This is great. You are all part of a crew, and you all have children, and you all have big boy jobs and stuff like that. So you can only play once a month on a Thursday for 2 hours, right? That's what this game is designed for. And if somebody can't be there, that's okay, because the macro game keeps them going. But I love the progress clocks, and I actually have been implementing them in other games. I just don't tell my players.
Nice.
Surprise, Justin. There's a progress clock going on with the mind flayers.
Which is
Yay.
what triggers, events so they don't seem random, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Brandon, do you have any thoughts?
No.
It's very much like our escalation die that we've been using for years, except you can have many of them.
Yep.
So you can have one progress clock for the security is going to find you. You can have another progress clock that your boots of Silent Step are going to wear out. You could have another progress clock is that you're going to be spotted by a rival thief trying to steal the same thing.
And you can have another progress clock going for the negotiation with another game that takes place over multiple sessions.
Yes. See, it's really a powerful tool that I think is defined well, more so than what we've done with Escalation Die, which is usually a little more vague.
I wonder if there's a place where you can bulk buy Trivial Pursuit discs. So when you're at the table, you can be like, oh,
Fill in a pie.
there's a pie.
I can probably 3D print something.
The last thing I wanted to touch on before...
You can probably use die too, depending on which sides there are.
Well, yeah, that's what we use, Escalation Die, which is, we go from top to bottom, but you go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6.
Well, I've seen escalation dies used in different ways too, but yeah.
That's how we use it, same as the progress clock.
Yeah.
The last thing I want to touch about is the stress and the trauma that comes with it. I know Brandon kept trying to trigger the stress just so he could see what would happen.
It's a neat concept, yeah.
Yeah, I think. Do you want to elaborate on that, Alex? Because I know as the GM, you probably read through that pretty good. I was just trying to figure out how to create a character.
Essentially, there are 2 ways that you can accrue damage, that you can accrue bad things. The first one, I'm gonna go get a character sheet up. The first one is trauma, and how you accrue trauma is that you have 9 ticks of stress, and stress is a commodity. Stress is it's a thing that you can use to get stuff, but stress, once you incur 9 stress, on the 10th stress you incur a point of trauma. Once you incur 4 points of trauma, you are dead. Well, dead, you can become a ghost character, which is kind of cool. So if you don't want your character to ever die, you don't have to other die.
Oh my
But
god!
then
Or
If you were
vampire or
carry-
zombie.
When you backstabbed
shit.
us, if you would have killed me, I would have totally haunted your asses like, hey, you're gonna miss. You suck, you jackass. The whole time, like the guy from Happy Gilmore.
So
sorry.
wait. When Khajiit threw himself off the roof to prevent the Casca from getting to him, and he died, does that mean he turned into a ghost?
It's an option.
he could.
I'm haunting your ass.
You
But
killed
what would have
yourself.
most
But
likely
anyways.
happened? But what would have most likely happened is the harm. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 different levels of. There are 3 different levels of harm with 5 different things that you can get. The lesser effects include things like you are very bad at walking a tightrope, or like you're dizzy, like you have bad balance. It's things like you have a broken hand. 2 is more things like you've gone blind. It's things like, and then 3 is like you're bleeding out, like your legs are shattered. And that is kind of how, and then whenever you incur more harm, then you die again. But that's kind of how the 2 different versions. So there's like physical harm, and then there's like mental harm. And it makes a lot of sense whenever you think about it like that. But yeah, that's kind of the, and then there's also like status effects that you can have. The status effects are, if this would load, the status effects are cold, haunted, I can't see this. This is so not helpful. Cold, haunted, I think it's obsessed, paranoid, reckless, soft, unstable, and I cannot read that last one.
Let's just take a moment to appreciate all these are
Vicious.
feelings that you can feel as a real
That's a good
person
one.
and
Yeah, and vicious.
understand how it is. I don't know what it's like to take a sword to the gut. I do know what it's like to be freezing cold, paranoid, and worried. So
Yeah. So that's kind of how stress and trauma happen. Stress can go away a little bit at a time, although you're most likely going to take on at least like 3 to 5 stress every single session. And it goes away a little bit at a time whenever you rest. Trauma does not go away. And that's kind of the thing about trauma is like, once you got trauma, and there's nothing you can do about it.
you
It can also-
stuck.
And as you play the game, you can build up your character's stash. So if they take too much trauma, they can go, I'm going to retire.
Yeah, right.
But-
so
Yeah, they either die or retire or
Throw them in the clink.
get locked up, but they're no more.
And I do want to briefly touch on with factions and characters. There's also like their tier of how high up you are up in the world.
Mhm.
Your heat level, how much of the law is on you, which can die down as time goes by. And there's also reputations among yourself and other factions. And there's a long list of factions in the game. They can be positive or negative.
Yeah. This episode is brought to you by us. I want to let you know that Exotic Equipment Perks is out now. You can pick up the PDF at critacademy.com or the hardcover PDF, the hardcover and the PDF on DriveThruRPG. Check it out now, because let's be honest, in 5th edition, your weapons can be so much more than just a damage die. The one thing to kind of go along with the trauma and the heat and all those details, something I noticed that Blades in the Dark does really well is consequences.
Yeah.
So because of the nature of the way the city is designed and the world around it, you can't always just leave. It's
No.
not easy to just leave. So when you talk about heat dying, not waiting for heat to die down, when the characters do something and they become noticed and there's a bounty on them, or the security's out to get them, or the blue coats, or whatever, there's a lot of stuff that they're going to have to deal with. Going out just to get information from a tavern or a bar becomes a bigger issue now. So now when you send, Crunch out to the bar after he cold cocked the guy in the
Iron Fist.
the what?
The Iron Fist.
Yeah, the Iron Fist.
Oh.
No, the what's the dude with the plague doctor's mask, right?
Oh, yeah.
All those actions have consequences, and your characters just can't wait it out anymore, or can't just expect it to go away. They have to wait it out and be careful and tiptoe around everything that they do, because that's going to change the way the GM sets the roles.
And when I try to like roll together information, and it might have rolls like a 3, which counts as a failure, I very well may have gotten spotted by a blue coat because I poked in the wrong location.
Yeah. And so that kind of becomes something that the players have to worry about that I feel like you don't really have to worry about all that often in games like D&D.
Yeah.
At least, I mean, you should, right? There's laws of the land. You should be following them. But I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, B.
Not really. You covered it pretty well. The only other game I've ever seen that has factions like that and consequences is GTA 2. They have a lot of different factions. When you do something good for one, the other one ticks down.
Yeah.
And I like that a lot.
That's a really good way to do it, and it handles it pretty well through the crew sheet because you have basically a crew sheet and a faction sheet, and on the crew sheet you've got the little layer and then all the little areas around it that can will be affected by the factions that you befriend or build ill will towards.
What's that one free-to-play third-person shooter that you play a sci-fi android that you're diving into?
Is that the new one?
No, it's damn it. When you were talking about it, I knew exactly what it was. I knew it was called, and I just lost
Warframe?
it. Warframe.
Yeah. There's factions in there too, and they make it very clear helping out some factions in that one lowers than others, and believe that is important because each faction has their own shop with specific gear.
Yeah.
And it is good gear.
But see, that's the benefit though, right? And you can do that in Blades in the Dark too, where based on the factions your friends you ally with or you become enemies with might affect the resources that you have access to.
Yep.
And once again, I think that being kind of the core focus of the Blades in the Dark game makes it very expansive while still being a drop-in episodic series.
It's literally just about making your crime empire.
Honestly, I think you could easily
Sorry, Alex.
print out each individual character sheet for each class and say, okay, pick one of the skills, pick an ally, enemy, add 4 pips, not up 2, go. That's all you got to do about your character right then and there.
Oh.
I do want to let everyone listening know, though, that you don't have to make these factions yourself. Just we're all talking about how intricate and how detailed it is, and I know, as a dungeon master and as someone who world builds, it's like, oh my god, I have to create these super deep. There is, I think it's 24. I think I looked it up, and there's a list of 24 factions. You don't have to have all of them. You can pick and choose which ones you want. You can have like one for each subcategory, anything like that. But they super detailed, tell you everything about these factions and tell you what standing the faction would have with what kind of person.
Right.
So they kind of do all of that work for you. Now, if you want to make your own factions, that's really fun, and go ahead and like maybe you can do a mixture of customized and non-customized, but you don't have to make these factions yourself. There's like 24 in the book.
Right. And the world building is done really well. So.
Oh yes.
And I think that'll probably do it. We've coming up on the end of our time. We've covered a lot of material.
And we actually stubbed the toes of future episodes too.
Yeah, we did. It's as you're playing Blades in the Dark, if you're looking for that Ocean's 11, would you say Peaky Blinders?
Yep.
That feel. You
Gangs of
can
New York.
You can jump in at any time. It's episodic. It gives you that really fun, cohesive, criminal kind of feel, and it executes it very well. Now here is our unearthed tips and tricks, system agnostic content for your tabletop RPG game. All right, well, I am super excited to talk about our monster today, the venomous razorback centipede.
Surprisingly, not from Australia.
So I really like story and lore, so I think that this is a good time to kind of branch in why I think the lore that kind of comes with this creature, as well as some of the features that we recommend adding to your monster to really give it that venomous feel, right? Yep. So the razorback centipede is a creature that tends to lurk in the darkness, around corners and dense forests, caves, hunting for prey to feed upon all the time. Now, let's start by talking about normally centipedes are what? Yay big? A little more than a hand span at most.
Yeah.
I mean, these are ginormous. They are like the size of horses They're huge. Can you imagine an insectoid thing like that just crawling towards you in your character?
Oh heck no!
I hate it.
You hate it?
I hate
it. Its fearsome distinguishing feature, it's got sharp razor-like spines that protrude from its back, hence razorback, which it uses to both defend itself and to attack enemies. Have you ever seen like centipedes crawling up on the sides of stuff?
Yep.
This thing crawls up on the side and then just drops from the sky on top of you on its back.
Oof.
Just trying to do like a reverse Mortal Kombat.
like a WWE, well, bam!
Yes.
That's amazing.
Off the turnbuckle.
Oh, that's awesome. It is said that the venomous razorback was created through a mix of evil voodoo type magic in order to deter enemies from approaching a certain area, specifically like a place where a voodoo doctor was experimenting, or a wizard was experimenting, solely designed to destroy anything that comes near it and ambush it. Of course, it was created by mixing several different little creatures.
Yep.
Venom of deadly spiders, the hard exoskeletons of giant centipedes, and of course you got to give a little bit of dragon blood in there to get that big size, right?
Yep.
Making it resilient and deadly. Now, there's a lot to go into detail on this, but overall, with that brief description, what is kind of going through your minds? What type of powers do you think really would fit this thing? Because I've got a few, but I want to hear what everyone else thinks.
I'm definitely picturing a lot of pincers, like a stinger on the back, of course, and you mentioned lots of spine, so I could even see it curl into a ball and roll towards enemies.
Oh, that's some next level Sonic shit right there.
Yep. And since you mentioned dragon breath or dragon blood, I can
Mhm.
picture like a poison breath of some kind too.
Oh, yes, my dude. What about you, Alex?
The first thing that comes into my mind is ambush. There's not a lot of monsters that you can actually like truly ambush the party with.
Right.
And so this would be really, really nice for an ambush.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point with the turnbuckle spike drop thing.
Shoot. If you get it this thing burrow, it'd be like the venomous version of a Remorez.
Ooh, that's a good stat block to use if you want to make your own.
There you go.
You're welcome. Thank you, Ian.
Mhm.
It's a good idea if you're playing 5th edition anyway.
Yeah.
So I want to I like the idea you talked about ambush, because I can totally see somebody like chaining a bunch of these up into the bottom of like a spike pit. So not only do they fall onto their backs with the spikes, but then these things can now breathe poison out.
They are the spike pit.
That was the point.
Yeah.
Got it. So we want to make sure that there's a few other features that really stand out. Obviously, with the poisoned or the spiked backs, that means just attacking these things can cause the character harm.
Ooh.
Which makes it very difficult. Think what is the porcupine, right? When something tries to attack it, it ends up harming itself. So you want to make sure it gets some sort of defensive armor when melee creatures attack.
I can picture it where if you're playing like Pathfinder 2nd Edition, for example, if you miss it and you fail by a certain amount, you take damage from its spikes automatically.
Ooh, I like that.
And if you hit it, but you still only hit it below a certain mark, like say within 5 of its AC, you'll still take damage anyway.
Yep, I like that.
But when you hit above it, then you're unharmed.
That is fantastic. That's a really cool mechanic. What do you think, Alex?
I like that a lot. I think that's really fun.
And of course it's negated though but that would only apply if you're within 5 feet of it. So
Okay. Now, obviously, since it's poisonous, we're going to want to give it some sort of bite effect. In 5e, poison is mostly just disadvantage on stuff.
it's still poison damage, but hey.
Yeah, I really like the idea of it having some sort of other debuff. Alex mentioned it being an ambusher, so perhaps it's also it has crippling poison or something, right? That slows them down, makes them sluggish. I can totally...
Paralyzed.
Yes. Well, paralyzed is pretty brutal, but I love the idea of that falling out from the sky, falling on somebody with its turnbuckle spike drop, poisoning them being paralyzed, and then just like spearing them and dragging them away while the party is trying to attack and chase it. You know, it's been mixed with spider blood, right? So it's got the spider climb or the spider walk, right?
Yep.
That allows it to, you know, climb on ceilings and stuff. And I think that makes for an interesting visual as far as combat is concerned. Because I can imagine this thing just grappling somebody, dragging them away, and then the player characters injuring themselves trying to stop it.
Ooh. Maybe instead of just a stinger on the back of the tail, it also has a pincer.
Ooh, so it can grapple them?
Yeah. Give
it an attack and grapple. So some of the monsters in 5e, they do that. They do attack, deal damage, and grapple, and then they just automatically do damage while the creature's grappled.
Yep.
Ooh, that's really good. I could totally see Alex throwing this at us. It drops out, lands on somebody, pinches them in their tail, and runs away, and we're trying to slam at it, and we're killing ourselves attacking the spikes as this porcupine-like centipede bullshit is running away with our friend.
Yeah.
That is not a invitation, Alex, just so you know.
Well, I'm just trying to think of what I would make its weakness, because, you know, all animals and all monsters do have some sort of weakness. So I'm trying to think of what I would make its weakness.
Ooh, well, I think that since it focuses on running away, maybe something that like a difficult terrain. No, like I don't know. Are you talking like a damage weakness or like something that incapacitates it, or?
If it's a thing that runs away, my first instinct is to make it where it doesn't have as many hit points. Like, it's squishy, and that's why it runs away, is because it's squishy, and that's the reason why it has defenses, is because it's very squishy. That's kind of my first instinct.
Okay. So what if it was vulnerable to like weapons that deal piercing damage? So it can get in between the spikes, and it's not actually got a hard shell under there. It's actually... Maybe it's pretty tender under there, and you get a piercing weapon like a rapier, and it's very super effective, right?
Yeah.
Maybe fire, too. Fire's pretty common, though, so it's pretty expected.
But it's also like one of the most commonly resisted, too. But then again, some games don't lean into weaknesses as much as they probably should, too.
Yeah, so. Is there anything else you guys would like to see on something like this monster?
I mean, it has a lot going on as is, so I think we're for the most part all right.
Yeah.
Yep. I think the biggest thing that I would like to see on a monster like this is a way to camouflage. I know that cloakers and ropers, they have a thing where if they're completely still, they're indistinguishable from a stalactite or stalagmite or a cloak or a coat. I think that I don't know what you would make this look like, but I would love to see some kind of camouflage on this, just to play in more to that. Yeah.
You could even give it something along like a thief or assassin's abilities that the first attack it does is just terribly dangerous.
Yeah.
As far as it being spiky and stuff, I think it would have to like look like some sort of plant or weed, I think, right?
Well, that's a good idea. Look like a cactus.
Yeah, ooh, a cactus. Because they're venomous, maybe they are green. And they look like a knocked over cactus because they're laying the long way, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. Indistinguishable from a strange looking cactus.
Okay, now I'm picturing a snake with spikes on it.
Okay, that's not too far off.
No.
Right? I definitely think like the idea of leaning into the stealth aspect. Maybe its ongoing damage isn't very strong. So it relies on that initial attack that maybe it's double or triple damage and only by surprise, and then it relies on the paralysis and then carry away its food. It's a fight. It's a monster that doesn't ever sit and fight to the death. It fights. If it can grab somebody with its poison, then it runs away. Mm-hmm. And I think that makes for a very interesting combat because you don't get a lot of the chase scenes, right? Yep. Much less one that every time you chase it, you try to grab it or punch it or attack it, take damage. So.
And one mechanic you did give it to was evasion, which is worth mentioning. So
I did give it evasion, and I think it leans heavily into the you talk about the rolling spike ball thing, right?
But I mean, between spider climb and evasion, you basically make this thing quite nimble. Is what it comes down to.
Yep.
So
don't let it get away; it's going to carry off your friends. So, All right, that'll do it for our monster, the venomous razorback centipede. So, why don't you join us in 2 weeks when we discuss creating characters and crews in detail in Blades in the Dark? If you enjoy the show and you'd like to support us, visit us at critacademy.com or follow us on social media and leave us a review. I can't tell you enough how important it is that if you can, please consider sharing our content from across your social media into your favorite Facebook groups that, talk about these sort of things and get our show noticed out there. I am your host, Justin.
I'm your co-host, Ian.
I'm your co-host, Alex.
And I'm your co-host, Brandon.
Have fun on your adventures and don't be a dick.
Be a dick.